Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a Premier Field Engineer specializing in System-Centered Technologies. Today's discussion will be part 14 in an ongoing series of discussions dealing with Application Deployment and Configuration Manager 2012. Today's discussion will focus on App-V, specifically client-side activities that take place. So to this point, we've talked about App-V already. We've talked about the sequencer. Now we're going to see how the sequenced applications actually execute on the client in a couple of different ways. So we'll start, here's the agenda. We'll start, obviously the introduction is now. We'll start again with an architecture review. We've seen it before. Just show it to you again to remind you of what the App-V infrastructure, when it's integrated with ConfigMgr, looks like. Then we'll take a look at some application components that are necessary. That's going to be the application, the deployment type, the client, App-V client. Then we'll spend most of our time watching App-V in action, several different deployment scenarios, how they work. And then we'll talk a bit about App-V and ConfigMgr integration, because that is pretty useful, frankly, whenever it comes to it. It allows you to do some things with the App-V integrated component that might be a challenge with other application virtualization solutions. And it just makes sense, frankly, if you're using ConfigMgr to use App-V. All right. So the discussion today really will be at a level 200-ish type of discussion. We'll delve into the details a little bit, just a little bit, on how the App-V client works. But point is just to show you this working in ConfigMgr. So here, and for this, we're going to use App-V 5.0. All right. So here we have just a quick reminder of the App-V infrastructure. So we have the sequencer. That's the part that we talked about in part 13, and how it works, essentially, to build virtualized applications, virtualized versions of applications. Then we have the ConfigMgr 2012 pieces. So we have, in this case, a CAS, so we have a hierarchy. Then we have our primary site and DP combination, and then just a DP only, right? So the box this time is around our clients, because the goal is obviously to push out the virtualized applications to our clients. So that's the focus. There's also a App-V 5.0 client component that has to be present on these boxes in order for it to work. Okay? So what are the components of App-V? Well, the App-V piece slides into the application model. That's how we deliver virtualized application packages. And so we'll spend a bit of time just talking about how to build or what the application is. I'll quickly show you how to start the wizard to build it, but really we'll look at the application. We'll look at the deployment type and talk about a couple of things there. And then we'll talk about the App-V client. So let me go ahead and pull in my lab and do those parts. Okay, so if I pull in my lab, so on the screen right now is the client. Let me move it out of the way. So here in my lab, I have four actually, virtualized packages that I pulled in. So I'll talk you through each one of them, but just to show you the real quick way to do it, to start the process, to create an application. And then from the drop-down, you have a choice. There are several here. The ones that we care about from an App-V perspective are whether we're going to build an App-V 4 application or an App-V 5. So all of these are App-V 5 applications. App-V 5 does require Configuration Manager 2012 Service Pack 1, and that's what I'm running here. Okay, so once we go through that, it's just a wizard and very few questions to answer. We'll go ahead and just build these pieces. All right, and so let me just walk through what we have. So for demo purpose, let me tell you about the environment first of all. So you saw the client down here. I'll show you more about it in just a minute. But on the client, basically I have a Windows 7 box that is running the pre-release SP1 client to support App-V 5.0, and is also with a full installation of Office 2010. Okay, and that leads us to our first demo that we're going to actually do on the client side when we get there, so I'll talk you through those real quick. Here, and I'll just use this one for our discussion of these pieces right now. So we're going to actually install Excel from Office 2003 standalone alongside Office 2010. which is not possible without application virtualization, but it does offer some really interesting options. Okay, so we'll use this just to talk through the application and deployment type, and then we'll hit all of these as we go into the demo on the client side. So if I go into properties, there's not a whole lot here that's unique to App-V. We certainly have our application catalog options and our general information options and such. References tab that we have available. Okay, so we have an addition of virtual environments. You'll see that because of App-V 5.0 and Service Pack 1. All right. Then we have our distribution settings. This is not hugely different. It's really not different at all than what we've had before. Same options here: medium, low, high. All right. Then we have our content locations. I have this on 1 DP right now, and any kind of supersedence relationship. So nothing, again, hugely different here. The deployment type, okay, is one that I've added. I don't have any requirement rules on here because I don't want it to be restricted. I want this to go out to everyone in my environment, so no requirement rules here. No dependencies either, though this is an interesting tab. So one of the things about App-V deployments that is required is an App-V client, whether it be App-V 4.0, 4.5, 5.0, doesn't matter. We need an appropriate version of the client on the boxes where we're going to run virtualized applications. So that does mean that you'll have two clients, one for ConfigMgr, one for App-V. All right, more on that in a minute. One of the cool things here is if you're deploying App-V applications in your environment, you know you need this client and you're going to have it deployed in most conditions. But it would be really cool to build a separate application for deploying the App-V component and create a dependency here so that if you deploy an App-V package and you don't detect the App-V client on a box, we'll just go ahead and put it on there for you. Right? So I don't have any dependencies here because I know the App-V client's on my box, but that's one thing you can certainly do. All right. This virtual environments tab is different, so this is new, so I'll talk to you about that in a minute more. There's nothing here right now. So I started here. Let me go back. General tab, just general information about the application. Content, this will tell you where the content is, more information about the content files. Some of these are again the same from before, so whether we persist the content in the client cache or enable peer-to-peer caching, so we definitely support that. The use of branch cache is an example for App-V. Then notice deployment options. So the default is download content from distribution point and run locally. The other option is stream content from the distribution point. All right. So App-V supports both, and the most useful of which in many cases is the default option to go ahead and just run it from the cache, download it to the cache, and run it locally because well, let's talk about the two. So streaming, as an example, certainly works. You can stream the content from the DP, no problem there at all. The issue is that doing so requires high bandwidth connections. You really need those to have to avoid issues with performance and things of that nature. Really, it's not flexible. If you want to try to run these things offline, it's really not doable. Your client needs to be connected to the network. It needs to be local to the DP and or have a really high bandwidth connection. All right. So if you have laptops or portable devices that travel around and that kind of thing, probably not the best option for you. All right. The better option is this first one. Okay, to download content from the cache and run locally. So what this allows you to do is totally run offline. Doesn't matter whether you're connected to the network or not. The App-V client knows where the virtualized version of the app is when it's downloaded, and we can run accordingly. And then we have deployment options for low bandwidth scenarios too, if you want to address it that way. Then finally, publishing. So when you sequence an application, we will figure out all the different pieces that are part of that application install and make those that we recognize as applications available to publish. All right. Now, you can see in this list, whenever I sequenced this Office Office 2003 Excel application, we picked up a few things that really aren't pivotal to running Office, such as Notepad, such as Internet Explorer, right, and things like that. So Windows Explorer, you don't need to publish shortcuts for those to run Office, so you could choose not to, and you could really, if you were building the sequence package right, you would take those things away because they're just not necessary. But in this case, I just left it as default, and we're good to go. So this is my standalone Office 2003 Excel package. Then I have my deployment. So the deployment in this case is just standard deployment like any other type of content. I have the content where it's located, options for DPs, whatever, deployment settings, this is available. Scheduling doesn't really apply except when it's available. Then I have the user experience, options, and alerts. Right. So this is just a standard available application. All right. So with that said, that's kind of a tour of the pieces that are necessary to configure a virtualized app and get it ready. Now there are a few more that I'll walk you through as we go through our demos, but that kind of covers that. So let's go back here and see App-V in action. So there are several demos that I want to do here. Okay, the first is to talk about App-V in a side-by-side scenario. That's one we alluded to already, where we have, for example, in this case, Office 2010 installed locally on the box, and I'm also going to deploy Office 2003, at least the Excel version in Office 2003. You can't do that in a normal physical install environment. Office 2003 cannot coexist with Office 2010. Okay, but App-V allows you to do that. So let's see how that works. So if I pull back in my virtual environment, oh, and sorry, there's a few others too, so I'll walk through them. App-V in a virtual environment using connection groups, virtual environment, kind of interchangeable. Talk about those as we get to them. We'll do an App-V install and look at the details of the install when we do them. Then we'll see what it looks like to have a required App-V install, really not that different from an optional install. We'll talk about removing App-V applications, and finally App-V and Configuration Manager integration. So we'll spend the rest of the time in the lab. All right, so here is my standalone Office 2003, Excel specifically. So if I look at my client, I can tell that I have Excel here. It is installed, right? I also have a couple of other things installed ready to go, but the one I care about right now is Excel. So if I look on my client, you'll see under Office that I have Office 2010 already installed here. I have Office 2010 version of Excel here, so I can launch Excel. No problem, it'll launch right away. Here it comes, and will look like Excel is supposed to look. Here it is. Now, let me go ahead and answer this and hit OK and be done. Okay. Now, what about Office 2003 version of Excel? So I see that in the list as well. This comes from the virtualized app that I have installed. So let me click on that. And what you'll notice is right alongside Office 2010 version of Excel, I'm going to load Office 2003 version of Excel. Works fine. There's no problem with it. Exactly as you would expect it to work. This is not possible without App-V because, again, Office cannot be, multiple versions of Office cannot be on the same box. But because virtualized apps run in their own contained bubble, it is possible. Okay? Office 2003 doesn't really see that Office 2010 is there. In fact, let me show you. So this application is definitely here, definitely has a shortcut, definitely running. But if I look in the standard location to try to deinstall the program or see if it's there or whatever, you're not going to see Office 2003 anywhere. And you certainly see Office 2010 here, right? But you don't see anything about Office 2003. But it actually is running. So if we go to Task Manager at this juncture and look at the task list, we definitely see that there are two versions of Excel running. Let me just kill this one off so we'll see one of those go away, and indeed it does. So it doesn't explicitly say Excel 2003 in this case, but it definitely was Excel 2003, and then this one is Excel 2010, and we can go ahead and get rid of that. Okay, done. Now let me launch Excel 2003 one more time. I want to call your attention to something that kind of obvious at this stage, but just to show you. Okay, so let me launch Excel 2003. So notice this is Excel 2003. It is just Excel 2003. Specifically notice this section of the menu. All right, you'll see that be more important in the next demo. All right, but for now, just notice it is standard Excel 2003, running in its own virtual bubble. No issues. It's there. We can see the file system, see everything we want to see about the system. We can use printers. We can do everything you'd expect to be able to do. Yet this box is not physically seeing that Excel 2003 is installed here. Okay, so we can come in here. I don't know that I have any printers defined, but let's just see. If I click print, then we'll see, yeah, so we have the standard printers here. Okay, so they're all available to this, even though this is really not physically installed on the box. Okay, so good enough, right? Okay, so the second demo, you'll notice that I have Excel 2003 add-in here. It is also installed. I could launch some things. You'll see from the taskbar that this Excel 2003 add-in is here. It's called Add-in Express on the menu item. So I can come in here and launch the README or go to the website or look at the license. I'll just launch the README here, and it comes up. Right. So this is a virtualized, sequenced version of this Excel 2003 add-in. But in order for this to work, it needs Excel. This add-in needs Excel to do anything because it's an add-in to Excel. Well, what I have, if I go back to my site server, is I have Excel sequenced by itself. I have Excel add-in sequenced by itself. So what that means is they are in their own virtual bubble. They can't see each other. Right? So what if you have a scenario, like I do in this example, frankly, where I have a product, LiveWriter in this case, and there's an add-on to LiveWriter that I want to be able to communicate together. Well, there's two options you have. One is to sequence them together. And that's what I did for this example that I'm highlighting right now, LiveWriter and Polaroid plugin. You'll see that in a minute. I sequence those together. It works fine. No problem. The two run side by side in the same virtual bubble, and it's all good. But doing that can sometimes complicate things because now you're having to maintain a virtual application package of two items together. Maybe you don't want them together all the time. So maybe you need to sequence now LiveWriter by itself, LiveWriter with a plugin, LiveWriter again with another kind of plugin, whatever. It just makes it a little bit more complex to manage these things. So you want the ability to kind of share these things between virtual environments becomes really important, becomes really interesting. And certainly we could do that. Took a bit of editing of files to make it happen in previous versions of App-V. In App-V 5.0, it is incredibly easy to make this work. Let me show you. So consider that I have Excel 2003 sequenced already. I don't want to sequence anything else with Excel. Oh, by the way, before I move on, let me show you. I don't think as I recall, I never showed you the App-V client. So let me do that. So if I double click on the App-V client, which is down here in the menu bar, then it's going to pop up the client. And this actually, you can get it to it the same way if you go into Computer and then just navigate to it under Program Files and then Microsoft App-V, then Client. Here's the same executable that I just launched, or I think I just launched. Let me go click it again to be sure. So yeah, it should be coming up. So this is the executable that launches that. So we'll have the App-V interface come up in just a second. And there it is. So actually I have two of them because I clicked it a couple of times. All right, so let's just minimize this. So this is an interface that allows you to interact with App-V, update components, download apps, work offline, whatever. You generally shouldn't have to mess with this. But it will allow you to see into the virtual apps that are actually in place on the box. And you'll see this one's in use. So Excel is currently running, I guess, or still looks like it is on this. All right, so I just refreshed it, went away. We have this thing called App-V connection groups. So what I was just talking about, being able to take Excel, take the Excel add-in, sequence them standalone so they're easier to maintain. right? You can actually join virtual bubbles, if you will, by using what are called App-V 5.0 connection groups. Okay, so you'll see that in just a minute. So the way you implement that from a ConfigMgr 2012 side is to come in here and look at App-V virtual environment. So you see I already have these packages here. They're standalone. They work right now, right? But if without connection groups, without the ability to join these virtual environments, I'm either going to have to resequence them together like I did here, or I need a way to essentially draw a dotted line between these virtual environments so they can see each other. The easiest way to do it, and it brings a ton of goodness with App-V 5.0, is to use these things called virtual environments. So I'm just going to go create a virtual environment. And this, I'm going to put two things together. You could put more than that if you wanted. And I'm just going to create a new group. I'm just calling these generic names. So the first thing I want to add is Excel. Okay, here's my standalone version of Excel. There's the deployment type that I want. I'm good. So let's add in now the Excel add-in that's also standalone. And hit OK. And I am good. So now I have created my test virtual environment. So the way I know that this is tied to just those applications is if I go back into the deployment type for Excel standalone and look at properties, then remember this virtual environments tab that was empty. Now it says test. Okay, so I can look at the properties of that from this this window and come in here and work on it and see just like before. Right? So here's my virtual environment for this app. And the same way, here's the standalone add-in. If I look at the deployment type for it, I will also have virtual environments available, same one. Okay, so I know now that these two are joined. So what I need to do to make this actually show up on the client. So now that I've created a virtual environment, what you might do when you first look at this is look through and find a way, is there a way to deploy this? Do I deploy this to a collection just like I do an application? The answer is no, because we already know where those applications are that that you've just associated by this virtual environment, aka connection group. So there's no real need to go do anything else. The client's going to take care of itself. So I'm going to kind of move this client through its processes a bit more. I'm going to go ahead and retrieve policy, and then also wait for that, and then also I'm going to force along a application deployment cycle. So here's the policy cycle. Go ahead and run that. And then I'm going to wait a couple of minutes, and I'm going to kick in another application deployment evaluation cycle. Now, that's really all I need to do. This process can take a few minutes for sure to manifest on the client, so I'm kind of trying to move it along. So what I'm going to do is pause the video, and I'll come back once we have everything in place, and we can continue. Okay, so we have this in here now. So what this is this is the representation of the virtual environment that I just set up. So if I click on this, I now know, or I can see that, in this virtual environment, I can see that from the configuration work I did a bit ago, that Excel 2003 and the add-in are now here. So let's see what's different. So if I go launch Excel, like so, then it will come up as normal. But notice that area that I was telling you about on the screen, I'm guessing where it is, yeah, right up here, where we didn't have anything before, we should actually have something show up here now. So let's see. So we're noticing Excel taking a little bit longer to launch. So let's see what happens. Okay, so there it is, and you notice right up top, ablebits.com. So this is just an add-on that I found on the web, and it's nothing in particular that I care about, but it is an Excel add-on and useful for demonstrating this. So because now we have the virtual environments in a shared scenario where the virtual environments see each other, I'm able to have this add-on do the job that it's intended to do, and there it is, in fact, and see all the different things and so on. This is, again, to me, one of the, it looks simple, it is, right? But it's one of the coolest things that we have in App-V 5.0 because it allows you to maintain separate virtual environments, yet be able to have them communicate with each other as you need them to throughout the environment. Okay, so let's go ahead and close this back down, and we'll move on. So the next demo that I want to do, let's go back on the client side. So, oops, I closed that down. Here, let me open it back up. Closed the wrong thing down, didn't I? There, Excel, go away. So the next one that I want to do is, I'll go ahead and leave that virtual environment there, is there's another app that I have here that is LiveWriter. So I have LiveWriter available, but I don't have it installed. Okay, let me refresh here for a minute. There we go. So I have it available, but I don't have it installed. So the point of showing this is I want to kind of step through exactly how this this works during a deployment. Again, we're not going to go in hugely deep behind the scenes, but I do want to show you a couple of things. So for example, oh, and one thing real quick while I'm here, if you notice in the UI for App-V, we will show you all the different PowerShell commands that are working at a given time. We won't show you, we're not showing you the detail here per se, but we are showing you the applets. So for example, if I refresh, you'll see the applets get updated, right? And so this is just kind of a cool little shortcut to show you what we're doing behind the scenes, what applets we're using and such. So definitely full PowerShell support in App-V 5.0. All right, so now we have LiveWriter that I have available. And I haven't installed it, so there's an opportunity for me to show working through the process. It's deployed as available. Now, whenever we deploy this thing, there's going to be two locations at which we need to consider. So if I go back now, just like a normal configuration manager deployment, whenever I select go, I'm going to see the content download to the cache. Okay. Now, in my case, because I'm choosing to run it locally, I'm not choosing to stream. If I was choosing to stream, it wouldn't be that way. All right, so it's going to go in the cache. The other thing that I need to pay attention to is for the App-V client, the data, oops, let me set this here. The cache that I use for ConfigMgr is not all I need. I will need the disks or the files stored in the App-V cache as well as the ConfigMgr cache. So that shows up on Windows 7 under Program Data and App-V. So here you'll see three folders, kind of placeholders, if you will, in one case, or that actually have the content in others. So let me show you. Inside this one, as an example, I will have another folder that is represented by a GUID. I'll show you how to figure out what those mean in a minute. But in here is a representative app. Here's my registry data, file system data, the actual app itself, so you can tell this is Office 11 and different things, right? Well, in the same way, I'm going to need to get that same information over into this folder for the LiveWriter deployment whenever I get that far. So I'll kind of park here and we'll watch it. All right. So let's go install this thing. So I'm going to click on install, and it shouldn't take long. It's not that big of a file. So we'll see it shift over to the installation status. We should see it pop up here in just a minute. And the first thing that it's going to go do is download the content. So the process, the pathway that we take for downloading the content in App-V is the same exact pathway that we take for, and there it goes, for a standard application, for a package. We're going to go ask CAS for the content, where they're going to go get the content with Content Transfer Manager and Data Transfer Service. Once the content is in place, then there's a thread called Virtual App that I'll show you that is used to kind of link up between the App-V client and make everything kind of hook in the way it's supposed to, right? So let's wait for that to install. We should actually see this in the cache at this point. There it is, right? Here's my LiveWriter download, so we see it in the cache. Now we're waiting for it to show up over in the App-V cache because it's kind of a one-step operation. There it is. It just showed up. We can see by the timestamp. So if I go in here and look, here's the placeholder folder, and inside of it we'll have the App-V stuff that we need, like here's Writer and so on. So we should be good to go at this juncture. Now, the question is, how do you know? Now, I watched it and you could kind of see things move through the system over time. How would you know what any of these individual files are? How would you be able to track this process? So, one of the ways is to look at the log. Like anything, look at the log in ConfigMgr, and we can see. So there is a virtual app.log is one of the key ones. I'll skip over some of the other ones. Again, don't want to belabor the point. It's not hugely different than other logs that process to pull content and so on. So if I go to Windows, CCM, logs. All right, so we'll go down to virtual app. Well, the logs folder opens. Virtual app.log, and I'll just open that up. Okay, so opening behind the scenes, and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of this, and let's see what we can see. So here we just see a little bit about, hey, this package 2C, 3C. This is, I know, the one I just did, so I can kind of correlate that this is the one I just installed, 2C, 3C. Well, in fact, I have a folder there called 2C, 3C. And notice the version GUID is D3F1, D3F1, right? So this exactly maps to the application, the version of the application stored in the App-V client cache. All right. So good enough. Now that's not the only place. So if we go, we'll just pop open the registry real quick. So I'll open the registry, and if I go look at the App-V client there in the packages and such, I can see some detail. All right, so that's the ConfigMgr client key. Let's move back up. Okay, here's App-V. So if I expand that out and look at the client, okay, then I have different things in here, such as my packages, all of the packages that I have local. I can see some of the registry keys for the package represented, versions that I'm storing, different things about it, D3, here's the catalog, and so on. So you do see some detail about this for sure. Notice also this registry key, package groups. So this package groups entry certainly corresponds to some of the work that we've done as well. Right. So let's see. Here's this, and different things. So you can see some of the detail as we drill through. All right. And then you can play around in here and look at the different pieces as well, and just different package pieces and what's all here and so on. Right. Here's the integration location. The path to where it's located, the stage location where the content's at, different things, right? So a lot of good information in here if you're trying to understand detail about what you've built. Okay, all right. So good enough. So now the App-V cache is populated, the ConfigMgr cache is populated. We're completely ready to run this. It's installed, no problem. We can go run LiveWriter just like you would expect. It's up here on our start menu. Take a couple of seconds to launch the first time, but then it launches and no problem. All right, so we'll wait for it to launch just for a second or two, and we'll see. Keeps flickering, so I think it's about to pop up, but it should be just any second now. Go ahead and drop that down. And there it comes. So LiveWriter is coming up. And I'll have to do a little bit of configuration to pull this in. Here in just a second. Yeah, I'll just go through this brief wizard and we'll have LiveWriter be able to pop up. Well, I'm not going to try to connect to it. But basically, if I were to go through and build this out, let's see if I can do it real quick. It may not let me. Let's see. Can't remember which one. Let's see. It's analyzing the blog. So I just want to bring this up and show you the Polaroid plugin if I can. I'm not going to worry about it too much because it is there and they're sequenced together. But anyway, all right. So I'll let that try to cook and then we'll move on. And if it goes, it goes. All right. So the last thing in terms of an App-V package that I want to show you is this one. So this is Adobe Reader. It's one that I've set to be required, but it's not required until the end of January, right? So I did it that way on purpose because since this is required, it's going to show in the ConfigMgr cache. We should have already downloaded the files for this because we know it's going to be needed sometime in the future. Let's see if I can find which one it is. That's not it. Let me go from the bottom up. There it is. So Adobe Reader, here's the files we've pre-downloaded into the cache. But if you look at the App-V client, we don't know anything about Adobe Reader right now. The App-V client doesn't even know it's out there. Right? So if I look at virtual apps, this thing is moving a little bit slow right now. There we go. So I don't have anything. I can refresh it, and I don't have anything about Adobe because we have not actually installed it yet. We know it's coming up, but we haven't installed it yet. Right? So if I look at the file folder as well in Windows Explorer for the App-V cache, we'll see there's no components of it there yet either. So that was under Program Data, App-V. And so we have 4 folders, 4 top-level folders, but none of them is Adobe. So let me go ahead and tell this to install. I'm going to go ahead and install it now. Okay, so we should go on through and begin the install here in just a second. Or let me pull this up too. There it goes. All right, good. So now it's applying the changes. And we should see an icon pop up here of Adobe on the desktop as soon as it gets done. We should also see files show up in the App-V folder here in just a minute, so we'll kind of wait for those to happen. Again, we've downloaded the content already on the client side. Nothing really needed to do with that. We've already got it. So now we're just hooking the two between App-V client and the ConfigMgr client, make sure that we communicate accordingly, and then we'll have this available and virtualized and ready to go. Right. So let's see if LiveWriter allowed me to do what I wanted to do. Nope, it's gonna gripe at me. Whatever, that's no big deal. Now it says downloading and installing software. It's really it's got the software already, so there's no need to download or install anything. It's installing it, and we should have over here just a minute a folder created. So yeah, LiveWriter is not going to let me configure. No big deal, but there we are. Okay, so waiting for Adobe, and then we'll be done with this part. And here we see the Adobe icon is now on the desktop, so I can launch Adobe probably at this stage. We're still finishing up the install, but I can launch it at this stage. You can see that I have an extra folder in here where now the App-V client knows that it's here. If I want to see Adobe represented, I can sort by date modified and go in here. This is going to be the folder for Adobe, and I can go through here, and here's Reader, so I know that's the case, right? And so we're still finishing up, but Adobe should be launching very quickly. All right. So again, simple examples, but things that I wanted to walk you through to show how this kind of works, right? Now, there's another component to this. In addition to installing apps on your box, you will want to, in some scenarios, deinstall the app on your box, right? So you need to be able to do that as well. So one of the things that you might be accustomed to with standard applications is just the ability to take away the deployment from the application or package or whatever, and then have that stop being offered on the client. That's certainly true. Right, here comes Adobe Reader finally. It's still finishing up the final phases of the install, but here it comes. And that's certainly true, right? And true for App-V too. So if you take away the deployment for App-V, then it's going to also take away that deployment option for the clients that are targeted. However, simply removing the deployment option doesn't really take it out of the App-V cache. doesn't mean that it's gone, right? So if you want to be really clean about removing at-V versions whenever you don't want them anymore, then what you really need to do is take away your deployment for install of the at-V package and send out another deployment that is an explicit uninstall of that, right? Just make sure that you have the results that you expect you have and that you want, right? So that's another piece. Now, last thing we'll talk about. So installing at-V packages, all that, good to go, pretty easy to follow, hopefully. But there's another piece of all this, and that is the ability for at-V content to integrate with ConfigMgr, for you to see it in ConfigMgr, if you will, right? So I've already talked about how, we definitely have Adobe here. No problem. We can see Adobe running in the task list. As soon as we launch it, it's there. It's going to be in the task list, no problem, right? Get this out of the way. Okay, I'll just clean the window up a minute while this launches. We can see it in the task list, but if we go to the control panel, it's not there, right? It's physically not there. So one of the ways, the way really, that we will inventory for software being present on the box is through add remove programs or programs and features today. Well, it's not here. We don't show it here, right? Because it's not a physical installation on the box. But there are other ways to be able to get the fact that Adobe is running as soon as it launches. There it comes, right? So if I look at the task list, this application shows up on the task list just like any other application. There's Adobe Reader running. So the fact that that's true allows us to pull this information through things like asset intelligence or software metering. Okay, so let's go look at that on the site server. So if I go in on the site server and go into my client here under all systems and look at hardware inventory through Resource Explorer, we'll see that we indeed have Adobe and the other ones as well. Now, add remove programs is where we would typically go installed applications, that kind of thing. You're not going to see it here because, again, this works through the programs and features list, which this is not published in. However, if you look at installed software, which is hardware inventory, it pulls through AI, then you're definitely going to see, here's AbleBits, that's the Excel 2003 add-on, here's Adobe, right? So we pull it that way. You can come down here and see my Windows Live. You can see Excel 2003 somewhere in here. It's available. I know I saw it earlier. Well, it's here. You might even see it, and I'm just missing it, but it's in this list, right? But you saw the other ones for sure. So that's one place. Another place you can go up, and I'm still looking for 2003, whatever, I know it's there. You can come in and see recently used apps. Again, this is AI, but we will see it in the list. Here's Able apps. Here's Adobe Acrobat, right? Scroll on down, we'll see Windows Live Writer. We'll see Excel in the list and different things. Right, so here's Excel. A couple of different versions because they're different, but they're here. So let's see if I go to properties on it. Yeah, so here we have the at-V client, so we know the folder path for this. And then let's try this one out. So here's different. So this is Office 14, so the full install of Office. So we can definitely tell the difference. So very interesting, right? Most organizations are interested in tracking assets and knowing what's out there. With at-V integration, we just know how to get that data. We get it and report it, and it doesn't really matter whether it's running virtual or whether it's running physical. We know that it's out there. We know that it's being used on a machine. Last thing is down here to monitoring, so software metering. Oops, I was already on that page. So software metering, same way. I haven't got any metering rules that I've built by hand, but what I have done is set up properties so that we will find machines that are running a given app and create a disabled software metering rule for us to be able to use. So through that, for example, I have Adobe Reader, right? I've got a rule for that, and I know that it's out there, and I know that it's running. Should also have a rule for Windows Live. If I scroll down to the bottom, yeah, here's Windows Live Writer, right? I should also have one for Excel somewhere in here, but you get the idea. So again, it just makes sense if you're going to use virtual applications that you allow it to integrate with ConfigMgr, and that if you have it in the environment, because of all the goodness that you can bring in a unified way. Right? So that's as far as I'll go with App-V and in this series. And again, you already know some of the nuts and bolts for previous discussions where we've talked about those, and they really do mostly apply here. The difference being the App-V client, I showed you some pieces there. The virtual app log, I showed that to you as well. So hopefully this gets you started down the road of virtual applications. That is a really cool world to explore, and good luck.